Welcome back to the Fusion 360 for Woodworkers course. Today we're going to use construction planes and the mirror command to speed up the production of those sliding dovetails, and then we're going to use the fillet tool to make some bull noses. That sounds good. Stick around. So this is where we got to. We dropped in this shelf here. Now before we go any further, somebody commented that I seem to have the height of the bookcase wrong. Initially it was 1252 millimeters, and somewhere down the line I've made a mistake and put that to 1216. So I just want to correct that, 1252. And obviously we're using parametric modeling, so that just recorrects everything. But just in case you were getting confused as to why that dimension had changed, I'd made a mistake. Happens. Okay, so what I want to do now is to start to look at the dovetails on these shelves. Now the first thing you notice is that these shelves are not yet the right size. Remember, we created a single shelf and extruded it and then used these to cut it. So consequently, these are too short. So the first thing I want to do is to batch these to the right length. And for that, I'm going to use the offset command. So first of all, let's delete all the bits and bobs we don't want. Don't want the internal panels, top panels, right panel, left panel, or the base panel. Now if you come up to the modify tool here, we've got this thing called offset faces. Shift the selected face or faces in a positive or negative direction. Select a single face or multiple faces and specify the offset direction. So let's pick up on this offset command. It brings up a very simple menu. What faces do you want to offset? Well, that's pretty easy. I want to offset that face, that face, that face, that face, and that face, and then spin this round. That face, that face, that face, that face, and if I can find it, that face. Now what do I want to offset these by? Well, we know that because that's going to be joinery. And if I click that, dunk, you can now see that they have all nicely been offset, and they've been offset from the place that we initially cut these panels in half using internal dividers. So that means if we come in, we can see they're now overlapping. And if we now come to our parametric models and we look at the length, and let's change the length now to 3000, dunk, you can see that that offset keeps position. So these are still cutting my panel to give me my separate panels, and I've offset the face from where that cut happened, which is exactly what we want to occur. Put it back to its right size before I forget. So now let's come in and look at these dovetails. Let's turn off what we don't want. So I want to get rid of the internal panels, top panel, right panel, left panel, and the base panel. And now I can come in and we can do the dovetails. Start off in the same way we always do, put a sketch on this edge of the board. But all I want to do this time is just to sketch one part of the dovetail. I'm going to come in with my line tool from that corner, random point to that edge. And there you go, I've got half of a dovetail. We'll now constrain it. We'll use sketch dimensions. We know that we want the dovetail to be the depth of our joinery, so use the joinery parameter. And we know we want it to be a 3-in-1, so it's going to be joinery divided by 3. And you can see that is now constrained. Let's extrude that. We're going to extrude that to an object around the back, and the object is the rear face. Done. Now let's look at this dovetail joint that we've just made, or this piece of a dovetail joint. The piece of dovetail that's going to go at the bottom is actually a mirror image of the one at the top, and always would be. And the dovetail joint that's going to go at this end will be a mirror image of the one at this end, and always will be. Now it is legitimate to go through and sketch all the different parts of these dovetails out, but there's a quicker way, and that quicker way involves two commands: a construction plane and a mirror command. Now a construction plane actually creates a plane at any point that you ask it to. There's an offset plane that will create a plane from a face or an object. There's a plane that will create a plane at an angle to an object. A tangential plane, which will create a plane tangent to a circle or a cylinder. A midpoint plane that sets something in the middle of two faces, etc. And there's all sorts of planes that we can have. Now, you have actually used planes before, and if you come back to the origin, these are planes. There's a plane, there's a plane, and there's a plane. And we started by drawing on these planes. So planes are really, really useful. They give us a reference point because our entire model is referenced from these three planes, and that's how the dimensions are working. So I can create a plane on this piece of wood that allows me to mirror this piece down here and then mirror the entire joint to here. We're in good shape. So let's first of all start by creating a construction plane. The one I want is a mid-plane. It creates a construction plane at the midpoint between two faces or work planes. So let's click that. It now says what planes do I want to create a midpoint on. Well, that one and that one. And look at that, it's now created another big orange square, which is a plane inside there. Now I can resize this plane, and if I come to this edge here, I can drag that edge and I can just scale it across. Which means I can actually create a construction plane right through the middle of all of my shelf, like so. That now allows me to use the second tool we're going to look at, the mirror tool. Makes a mirrored copy of selected faces, features, bodies or components at equal distances across a plane. Well, I've got a plane, I've just made one. I've just made a center construction plane. So, what do I want to mirror? I can mirror faces, bodies, features or components. I want to mirror a feature because this dovetail here is a feature. So let's come in and let's select it. Just come on there and just select that. And now select the mirror plane, which is that one we just made. Bang, and OK. And hey presto, I've now got a dovetail, which is pretty cool, right? I can do the same again. So let's create another construction plane. Again, a midpoint plane, and this time I want it from this end of the shelf to that end of the shelf. And look at that, it's now put another construction plane here. Send to make that a bit higher so you can see it. You see? So I can do the same again. I can now come along and say, right, my mirror command, I want to mirror a feature. It's going to be that feature there and that feature there. And I want to mirror it around that center point. Bang. And there you go. I've now created the dovetail joints on that shelf. Now what you want to make sure of is that you never delete your construction planes. This is a mistake I made a couple of times. I don't want these anymore. I'd right click and I'd delete it. I don't want to do that because if I do that, these have got no reference points anymore. Therefore our parametric model won't work. If you come up to the side here now, you can see we've got a new command, construction. And inside there are all the construction planes that we've made, the initial plane and those two planes that we've just made. I can hide those individually, or I can hide them all. So let's hide them all. And there you go. And you can see that I've now got the dovetail I'm looking for. Now, in theory, because we've referenced that against known components, if I come back in with my unit, I should be able to resize this, and that should scale up. So let's go to the bookcase length, and let's turn this into 3000. Dunk. And you can see that's resized. Now it's resized because these dovetails are referenced from this piece of a dovetail that we created in this corner. This one is referenced from that one, and that one's always tied to that corner of the joinery. This one is referenced to that one, and they're both referenced by those midpoints. The midpoint plane was referenced from the end of this stock. So as this stock extends, or it grows in height, or even grows in width for that matter, these will always be referenced from that midpoint plane, and that's why that parametric model works. So that's the quickest and easiest way of creating those dovetails. So let's hide everything again we don't need, and let's come back in and do that again so you can see it. And this time we're going to make a drawing on this one. And all I care about is a drawing at this one end here. Make any random dovetail shape you like. Constrain that using our joinery parameter. Constrain that again using our joinery divided by 3. Okay, finish the sketch. Now extrude that. Extrude it to an object, and the object we want to extrude it to is obviously the back edge. Okay, cool. Create a construction plane, and we'll have a midpoint plane. I want it between that face there and that face there. I've already got the construction plane in the center because we did that earlier on. Okay, now let's create the mirror of that. Come in, we want a feature already collected. Select the feature we just made. Select the mirror plane. Okay. Now we'll come back into the mirror again, but just as another quick tip, rather than selecting creating down here, if you right click, you get this fast menu here, and that will always give you at the top the command you last used. So I can just come in, right click, repeat the mirror, and it's going to bring this up. So I want to select features again, so we know it's that top one, and we know it's the bottom one, and I want to select it against that center point. Bang, and now you can see I've got my dovetails there. And we just repeat this on all our joinery. Hide my construction planes and turn everything back on, and we now have all our dovetails done. Always makes sense to check. Let's just readjust this to the appropriate length, which was 2,352. Bang, and look at that. All our gorgeous dovetails are resized just as you would expect them to. And that's a really fast and super neat way of creating repetitive joinery. Is it me or does it look too tall? 1252, that's right. Okay, cool. We now need to make the sliding dovetail components, and we've done that before. It's a bit painful, this one, but we can get it done pretty quickly. Modify. Select the target body, select the tool body, make sure we keep the tool, cut. Select the target body, select the tool body, cut. Repeat the combine, target body, tool body, cut. Repeat combine, target body, tool body, cut, cut. And there we go. So now everything has now got our sliding dovetails inside it, and if everything's worked as it should do, we can actually resize this bookcase to 3,000. Dunk, and everything is resized accordingly. In fact, let's get silly on this one. I'm going to change the height to 2,000. Let's change the width to 300. Let's change the length to 4,000, and let's use really stupid stock at 25mm. Bang, and look at that, everything is resized beautifully for us. All the joinery is recalculated, all the boards, all the distances. And that's one of the key features, I keep coming back to this, but parametric modeling inside Fusion is just a game changer if you are a woodworker. Control Z, put it all back to where it was. So the next thing we want to do is to look at this shelf here, this fixed shelf. Now that shelf is in the middle of that face and that face, and we now know about construction planes. So the easy way of doing this is by creating a construction plane. I'm going to use a midpoint plane again. It's going to be between that face and that face. Okay, and now you can see I've got a midpoint plane. Now you can draw on planes in the same way we came in at the very start and we drew on the origin plane. We can draw on construction planes, and that will hold whatever we draw at that height, i.e. midpoint between that surface and that surface, which is exactly where I want that shelf to be. So come with your sketch, bang. Now because we're drawing on a midpoint plane, there's not an awful lot for it to reference. If you come in with your edge, it's not referencing on anything. So we need to constrain this a little bit. So what we'll do, we'll just draw a random rectangle there. So I now want to introduce you to constraints. That's these red things here. Constraints allow us to constrain an object, which is exactly what we want to do. We want this edge to be constrained to that edge, and that edge to be constrained to this edge, and this edge to constrain to that side of the bookcase, and the other edge constrained to that side of the bookcase. So if we know that, let's constrain it. I've got a number of tools to choose from here. I've got a horizontal vertical, constrains a single line or 2 points to lie on either the vertical or the horizontal axis, whichever is closer to the current alignment. I've got one where I can do coincident, which aligns a point. I've got a constraint that will align a plane or an object to a tangent of a curve. I've got a constraint where things will always be equal sizes, where they'll be parallel, where they'll be at 90 degrees, where that will be a midpoint, whether it will be concentric to a circle, whether it will be collinear. Constrains 2 more objects so they share a common line. That sounds good to me, so let's check that one. We don't get any boxes here, but I can now click on an unconstrained line. So this back edge here will constrain to there. This front edge will constrain to there. This left edge I'll constrain to there, and that right edge I'll constrain to there. And now I can finish my sketch. And what that's given me is a sketch exactly at the midpoint on the cupboard, which is not too shabby, is it? So I want to extrude this, so I'm going to extrude that up by stock thickness. But this time, because I want that shelf to be in the middle of my unit, I'm going to divide it by 2 and make sure I create a new component. Okay, and we're going to call this one mid shelf sub assembly. Cool. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to extrude it down by stock thickness divided by 2. Now that will give me the total width of the shelf, the thickness of the stock, but it's obviously now directly in the center of that bookcase. So that works really, really well. So another great use for construction planes. We can now see that we need to do some work on this one. It's too long by stock thickness, it's too long by the stock thickness, and we need to cut it into half. The other thing is, I've not got that 10mm gap that I want at the front here. So let's first of all push this backwards before we break it all up. So we'll use the press pull tool. I'll select that front face. I'm just going to push it backwards by a fixed amount, minus 10. So that will always go back by minus 10mm. And you can see just offset that a little bit. And that just gives you a nice little feature there at the front, which I quite like. Okay, next thing I want to do is to just make sure it's the right length. So we're going to hide everything now apart from that shelf there. And I want to offset this. We've done that before, so I'm going to come in. I'm going to do an offset face. I want that face offsetting, and I want that face offsetting, and I want to take it back in by the stock thickness, so minus stock thickness. Dunk. Okay, so now when I bring everything back in, you can see that's now the right length overall. What we can now do is our old friend, modify. So let's collect the tools first of all. So that's a tool, that's a tool, that's a tool, that's going to be a tool. We are going to cut that there, so you can see everything goes red, you can see what it's going to give me. Okay. Now underneath the mid shelf sub-assembly, we've got a whole look of bodies. Let's create components from these bodies. Okay. I think, if I remember rightly, we were on number 7. Yeah, okay. So let's select that and let's look at the properties of this. Now let's call this part number 007. The description is just sub assembly. Next thing is, let's get these ready for the joinery. We know these want to be the joinery length on both sides, so let's turn off anything we don't care about for a second. Okay. So let's come in with our modify tool. We're going to use an offset face, and we want to do that face, that face, that face, that face, and that face. Spin it round. And want to do that face, that face, that face, that face, and that face, and we want to offset it by joinery. Bingo! So now we've got that set. Now the final thing I want to do is I want to put a bull nose on this just so it looks pretty, and we've got a tool up here known as the fillet tool. Adds fillets or rounds to one or more edges, faces or features. Sound familiar? Very woodworking. So what we do first of all is we select the edges. So I want that edge, that edge, that edge, and 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 that edge. Now in theory that should be a 9mm radius, so it should join in the middle, and look at that. Bang. Have you ever seen such a beautiful bull nose in all your life? Looking good to me. Now I can bring back in my components. And now I want to make these a stopped dado inside this bookcase. So let's do that joinery. Back to our friend the modify. Select my target body, select my tool, make sure I keep the tool okay. Repeat combine. And then just bang your joinery in. Okay, and with that done, if we now hide that component, you can see I've got my beautiful sliding dado inside there, all looking pretty good. I can now come in and I can give these some names and come into component 1, select the properties. It's going to be 007A. I'm going to call it left mid shelf, and the description is going to be length of 285.75 times width of 255 times thickness of 18. I can copy that. Okay, let's get some physical material on this. Let's get the pine going on here. And there you go. So that's all the shelves done and all the joinery done. So that's it. I think we'll leave that there for today. We've learned quite a few things. We've looked at construction planes, we've looked at the mirror command, we've looked at the fillet command, and we've put a lot of the existing knowledge into practice. So I hope you're finding this useful. Next time I want to look at the holes on the panels for those adjustable shelves and get the back on it using tongue and groove. See you then.